She thought she was just picking on a man in his front yard. What she didn't know was that he wasn't just any man. He was a decorated veteran, and the moment she tried to humiliate him for wearing his camouflage, she invited his entire Special Forces unit right to her doorstep. And what happened next left the whole neighborhood in shock. This is not a story about clothing. It's a story about respect, sacrifice, and what happens when arrogance collides with experience. It happened in a quiet, upscale suburban neighborhood, a place where lawns were manicured, fences painted, and neighbors waved politely. At least on the surface. But behind closed doors, not everyone was so welcoming. The man at the center was David, a retired Special Forces soldier. Decorated, disciplined, but humble. He had served overseas for decades. He had faced danger most people couldn't imagine. But now he wanted peace. He had bought a modest home, tended his garden, and wore his camouflage proudly. It wasn't a statement. It was part of him. But to one neighbor, it was a problem. And that neighbor was Karen. Karen was on the HOA board. She liked rules, but more than that, she liked control. She saw herself as the gatekeeper of the neighborhood's image. To her, camouflage didn't fit the picture. One morning, as David was trimming hedges in his yard, Karen stormed over, clipboard in hand. "Excuse me," she barked. "That outfit. It's not appropriate for our community." "Take it off." David looked up, confused. "My clothes?" "Yes," she snapped. "This is a respectable neighborhood. We don't need that." She gestured at his camo shirt and pants. David stayed calm. "Ma'am, this is my yard." "My clothes?" "I served in these." Karen smirked. "Well, maybe you should keep them in the past. Round here, you follow HOA standards. Either change or we'll fine you." Her words cut deep, not just because of the insult, but because they dismissed years of sacrifice. At first, David ignored her. He thought, maybe she's just having a bad day. But it didn't stop. Every time he wore his camouflage, whether for yard work, walking his dog, or even just stepping outside, Karen made comments. "You're lowering the property value. You're scaring the children. This isn't a military base." David tried to reason with her. "I'm a veteran. This is who I am. I'm not hurting anyone." But she didn't want reasoning. She wanted compliance. Soon, letters from the HOA appeared in David's mailbox. Violation, inappropriate attire in community common view. He went to the board meeting, hoping to clear things up. Standing before the panel, David explained his service, his pride in his uniform, and his right to wear it. Some members nodded in respect. But Karen interrupted. "This isn't about respect," she said. "It's about appearances. If we let him wear camo, what's next? Pajamas? Bathrobes?" Her words dripped with disdain. The board was divided. No decision was made. But Karen left smirking, convinced she'd won. The harassment escalated. One evening, David returned from a veterans event, still in full dress. As he stepped out of his truck, Karen stood at the edge of her driveway. "You're a disgrace," she spat. Trying to play soldier boy. Neighbors heard. Some gasped. Others looked away, too afraid to intervene. David clenched his jaw but stayed silent. But inside he was boiling. Not for himself, but for every service member disrespected by her words. A week later, David hosted a barbecue. Just a few friends. Fellow veterans, old faces from his Special Forces unit. Men who had bled beside him. They laughed, told stories, grilled burgers. For once, David felt at peace, until Karen appeared. She marched across the street, furious. "What is this?" she shouted. "A gang meeting. Do you think you're intimidating us with your little soldier club?" The veterans fell silent. These were men who had parachuted into war zones, faced ambushes, lost brothers in combat. And here was Karen calling them a gang. David stood. "These are my brothers," he said firmly. "We served this country." Karen sneered. "Well, not here you didn't. Around here you're just troublemakers." That was the moment everything changed. The veterans didn't argue. They didn't shout. They exchanged looks. Quiet, knowing looks. Later that night they talked, not about revenge but about respect. They decided Karen needed a lesson. Not a cruel one, but one she'd never forget. David made a call. Within days, members of his old Special Forces unit arrived. Not for intimidation, but for demonstration. The following Saturday, Karen woke to a commotion outside. Trucks lined the street. Men in uniform, not combat gear but crisp dress blues, stood tall. Flags unfurled, David and his unit set up in the cul-de-sac. They weren't hiding. They were honoring. Neighbors gathered, curious. The veterans held a small ceremony, a tribute to fallen brothers. A flag folding. A salute. Karen stormed out, furious. "What is this circus?" she shouted. David turned. His voice carried power, steady and unshaken. "This is respect. Something you've forgotten. You demanded I take off my uniform, but you can't erase sacrifice. You can't erase service, and you will never erase pride." The crowd clapped. Neighbors who had once stayed silent now cheered. Phones recorded every moment. Karen's face turned red. She tried to yell, but the noise drowned her out. By evening, the video was online. HOA Karen disrespects veterans, gets schooled by special forces. It spread fast. Thousands of views. Then millions. The HOA scrambled. They issued an apology to David, praising his service. Karen was removed from the board after pressure from the community. But the twist? It wasn't just online fame. A week later, David received a letter. Not from the HOA, not from Karen, from the mayor's office. "Mr. David, we would be honored if you led the Veterans Day Parade this year. Your story has inspired the city." As he read the letter, his phone buzzed. A message from one of his unit brothers. "She wanted you to take it off. Instead, now the whole city wants you to wear it." David smiled. Karen's attempt to erase his pride had done the opposite. She had amplified it. Respect is not about control. It's about recognition. Every stripe, every scar, every piece of camouflage carries a story. Karen saw only fabric, but the community learned to see the man, and sometimes the best revenge is not shouting or fighting back. It's standing tall, proud, and letting the truth speak louder than hate.